and Judson, A Missionary Life for Burma by Sharon James. Chapter 14. This Garden of the Lord, 1822. To leave Adoniram had been heartbreaking. From Calcutta, Anne wrote, "Nothing but the prospect of a final separation would have induced us to decide on this measure. But duty to God, to ourselves, to the Board of Missions, and to the perishing Burmans compelled us to adopt this course of procedure, though agonizing to all the natural feelings of our heart." Her health had not improved during the sea voyage to Calcutta, and the doctors there insisted that the only cure was departure to a cold climate. To Anne's great disappointment, the only possible passage to America was far too expensive. She was forced to accept a place on a ship bound for England, which sailed on January 5th of 1822. Because she agreed to share a cabin with 3 children, the expenses were all covered by their father. She resolved that if the liver complaint cleared up during the voyage, she would return to Rangoon by return passage on the same ship. If not, she would try to proceed to America. On arrival in England, it was clear that immediate return to Rangoon was out of the question. But it was also evident that the work of the Judsons was much admired, and she was welcomed wherever she went. All possible measures were taken to make her stay as comfortable and enjoyable as possible. A Methodist member of Parliament, Joseph Buttersworth, became her mentor and sponsor. She wrote from his home in London on June 7th of 1822 to a friend in Scotland, "My dear Mrs. Deacon, from this highly favored part of the world, this garden of the Lord, I am allowed the happiness of addressing you. Striking indeed is the contrast between this splendid city and that wild idolatrous country, where all my former letters to you have been dated. Yet I cannot say that the same happy sensation pervade my mind as on former occasions when writing. For though I am in the Christian world and surrounded by kind, dear friends, yet I am far away from my world, and feel in a state of constant anxiety relative to my little world, which is left far behind." Expenses were provided for an extended stay in the spa town of Cheltenham, and the Deacons were also offering an all-expense-paid trip to Scotland. From Cheltenham, Anne wrote again to Mrs. Deacon on June 21st of 1822. "Dear Mrs. Deacon, I have delayed answering your kind letter for several days for the purpose of bringing my mind to a decision relative to visiting Scotland. After weighing the subject maturely, I am compelled to say that I ought not to visit Glasgow. Inclination prompts my setting off immediately, but judgment and reason dissent. Since restoration to health is my great object, since I have left my dear home in Burma, and subjected myself to a state of continued mental discipline for no other cause, I am convinced that duty demands my rendering subservient to the promotion of my health every inferior consideration. During my residence in London, my health very sensibly declined, from no other cause than being continually surrounded by dear Christians, whose society was so congenial and interesting to my feelings as to carrying them beyond the bounds of their companion. The body and induced that languor and exhaustion from which I have hardly yet recovered. Meeting with my dear Christian friends in Scotland, I am well aware would produce the same effects. I could not be with you, my dear Mrs. Deacon, without having all my feelings excited, or without telling you of the wonderful dealings of our covenant God with us in Burma, a recital of which quite unnerves me. This, together with the fatigue necessarily occasioned by the journey and the shortness of my stay in this country, is my reason for my coming to the conclusion that I ought not to visit Scotland. I do most sincerely thank you, and dear Mrs. Deacon, for your urgent request to reside for a few days in your family. I know of nothing that could afford me greater pleasure, excepting an immediate return to Rangoon, than to comply with it. But though we be deprived of the pleasure of an interview on earth, I trust we shall meet and recognize each other in heaven, where I hope to introduce you to some of my Burman females as trophies of the wars of Christ, and whose souls are made white by his precious blood. A few more years and perhaps days, and our work will be done, our toils ended. Let us be faithful unto death, and we shall assuredly receive the crown which shall forever distinguish us as followers of the Lamb. I have been ordered to Cheltenham to drink the mineral waters. I shall continue 10 days longer, when I hope the physician will think me in safe state to visit America. Please do to direct, as before, under cover to Mrs. Butterworth, who will know where to find me. I have not heard from Mr. Judson since my arrival in England. Expect to hear every day. Pray for me, my dear Mrs. Deacon, and believe me, very affectionately yours, Anne Judson. She changed her mind regarding the trip to Scotland, but her friend Joseph Buttersworth felt compelled to try to limit the demands that would be placed on her there. He wrote 2 urgent letters to her host, Mr. Deacon, warning of the danger of letting her do too much. Bedford Square, July 20th of 1822. Dear Sir, Mrs. Judson has, of course, informed me that she sets off for Scotland by the steam packet James Watts early on Wednesday morning next, and will probably reach Edinburgh on Thursday night or early on Friday. Perhaps you will write to some person at Edinburgh to meet our very dear friend and conduct her to Glasgow. One should like her to see Mr. Gordon, Mr. Gray, and a very few friends at Edinburgh. But repose is absolutely necessary for her. If she could be taken away from all society for a short time, it would be a great comfort. The excitement of friends is too much for her shattered state. I therefore write this as a charge to you and Mrs. Deacon, that if you wish to preserve the valuable life of our friend, you must keep her quiet. Her natural vivacity and love of 2 lines cut away, placed under strong coercion. You will, sir, I am sure, pardon this intrusion from a stranger, but I feel too much interest in behalf of our friend not to feel it my duty to lay an embargo on her friends, that she may not be absolutely destroyed by kindness. Signature cut away. It was Jos. Butterworth, Bedford Square, July 29th, 1822. Dear Sir, I am truly rejoiced to hear that our dear friend Mrs. Judson is safely arrived in Scotland, but finding that she is in very great danger of being absolutely killed by kindness, I take the liberty of writing once more to caution my good friends, Mr. and Mrs. Deacon, of their danger. They are altogether responsible for the life and health of our friend, so far as human means only are concerned. I am induced to write in this cautionary strain, as I find Mrs. Judson was quite well on board the steam packet, when she was quiet, but since she arrived in Edinburgh her pain has returned, and I know this to be occasioned by company and excitement. Repose is absolutely necessary for her delicate frame. Her recovery is doubtful, and the best means should be devised for her restoration. Mrs. Judson's own words were to me here, at Edinburgh, I am surrounded by these warm-hearted Scot people, who are ready to eat me up. Now, my dear sir, the agitation which Mrs. Judson must naturally feel at the prospect of being eaten alive cannot commend her health, and I must request that both you and Mrs. Deacon will allay her fears and place her in some situation of safety. I have just received the enclosed lamentations from the young man I employed to land our good friend at Edinburgh, which you will be pleased to hand over to Mrs. Judson. I trust that the interviews with Mrs. Judson will have with friends in Scotland will be rendered mutually profitable. With kindest regards to Mrs. Judson and Mrs. Deacon, I am, dear sir, your faithful Jos. Butterworth. While Anne was in Scotland, the American Baptist Board sent a request that she return to America, saying they would provide the fare for the trip in the New York packet. A number of women at Liverpool intervened and raised the funds for her travel in a much more comfortable ship. She sailed for America on August 16th of 1822, just about a year after having left Rangoon. She wrote, August 16th, embarked on board the Amity for the United States. Mr. and Mrs. Deacon, Miss Hope, Miss Jones, and her brother accompanied me about 50 miles. They returned in the steamboat. After the departure of these dear friends, I felt sad and disconsolate, being quite alone, without any Christian friend on board, or any female with whom I can converse. Yet I'm not alone. The same kind and glorious being, who, notwithstanding all my provocation, has hitherto directed my steps and at times granted me his presence, is still, I trust, with me, and will make my way prosperous. I hope to enjoy much of his presence during my passage, and spend more time in the immediate duties of religion than my late rambling life has admitted. Should I be preserved through the voyage, the next land I tread will be my own native soil, ever-loved America, the land of my birth. I cannot realize that I shall ever again find myself in my own dear home at Bradford, amid the scenes of my early youth, where every spot in association with some tender recollection. But the constant idea of that, my dear J., is not a precipitator of my joys, will mar them all.